Ladies, let me ask you a question. Have you ever met a guy who seemed so into you at the beginning, and then poof, he's gone. He chased, he complimented, he showed up until he didn't. And now you're left wondering, what kind of woman do men actually chase and keep chasing? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover today, because it's not about being the perfect woman. It's about being the kind of woman that he can't help but pursue. Let's talk about something that is massively misunderstood when it comes to dating. And I mean misunderstood to the point where it's costing women connection, clarity, and frankly, their sanity. It's this idea of being hard to get. Now, I get it. You've been told for years, maybe even decades, that men love a chase. That if you're too available, too eager, too warm, you'll scare him off. So what happens? You start building these little walls. You don't reply too quickly. You downplay your feelings. You pretend to be more detached than you really are. But let me tell you something that might shift your entire perspective. Men don't chase women who build walls. They chase women who have standards. There is a massive difference. When you have walls, you keep people out, not just the wrong ones, but also the right ones. You become emotionally unavailable under the disguise of being strong or independent, when what you're actually doing is signaling, I've been hurt and I'd rather protect myself than connect. Walls are about fear. Standards are about value. A woman with standards says, here's how I deserve to be. I traded, and if you can't meet me there, that's okay, but I won't stick around to convince you. And you know what? That's incredibly attractive, because when a man sees a woman who lives by her values and enforces her boundaries, not with attitude, but with calm certainty, it sends a message. This is someone who knows herself. This is someone who won't compromise just to keep me around. Now, let me be very clear. Standards are not ultimatums. This isn't about walking into a first date with a checklist of demands or trying to control what he does. Standards are quiet. They don't have to be announced. They show up in the way you respond. He cancels last minute. You say, I totally understand things come up, but I value my time. Let's find a time that works for both of us. He texts you at midnight asking if you're free. You don't send a bitter message. You just don't reward that kind of behavior with your time or energy, not out of punishment, not out of ego, but because you know that your love, your presence, your attention is earned. And here's where the shift happens. When you stop worrying about whether he likes you and start asking, do I like the way he's showing up for me? That's when the whole dynamic changes. That's when you become the chooser. That's when a man realizes, whoa, she doesn't need me to validate her. If I want her, I have to bring my best self. The chase, it's not about manipulation. It's not about breadcrumbs or power plays. The kind of chase we're talking about is when a man feels naturally compelled to pursue you because being with you makes him better. Because your presence doesn't come with pressure, but it comes with standards. He knows you're not waiting around. He knows you're not auditioning for him. He knows you're already living a life you love. And if he wants to be part of that, he has to show up in a way that adds to it, not complicates it. And let's be honest, a man doesn't fall in love with the woman who tries to fit into his life. He falls in love with the woman who has a life so rich, so full, so self-respecting that he wants to rise to meet her in it. You don't get that by being cold or distant. You get that by knowing your worth. By the way, this isn't just about dating. It's about how you show up in every area of your life. It's how you speak to yourself. It's how you allow others to treat you. It's what you tolerate. And when a man sees that your life is guided by values, that you're kind but clear, soft but strong, warm but discerning, he doesn't run from that. He's drawn to it. Because in a world full of people willing to settle for crumbs, a woman with standards is rare. And when you're rare, you don't chase, you're chosen. Let's move into something that I think a lot of people intellectually understand, but emotionally struggle with. And it's this idea that being in a relationship doesn't mean your life stops. It doesn't mean your passions go on pause. It doesn't mean you shrink yourself down to fit into someone else's world. In fact, the kind of woman that men truly chase, the one they remember, respect, and stay obsessed with is the woman who has a life. And when I say has a life, I don't just mean a job. or a calendar full of things to do. I mean a life that is full of purpose, of joy, of things that light her up, with or without him in the picture. Because here's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not your availability that makes someone fall in love with you. It's your aliveness. You know what's magnetic? A woman who wakes up excited about something other than him. A woman who doesn't disappear into the relationship. A woman who still goes to her dance class, who still makes time for her closest friends, who still works on her goals, who still travels, still learns, still grows. She doesn't make him her whole world. She invites him into hers. And when a man sees that, something very powerful happens. He feels that he has to earn his place, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're already fulfilled on your own terms. Let me give you a simple example. You know those early days when you're texting back and forth, maybe you've gone on a few dates and everything feels exciting. A lot of women fall into the trap right there. They start making him the center of their schedule. They cancel plans with friends, push aside commitments, even start thinking about what he might want before they consider what they want. And here's what happens. The dynamic shifts. Suddenly he goes from seeing this radiant, vibrant, independent woman to feeling like he's the sun in her universe. And that's when the attraction starts to fade. Not because he's a bad guy, not because he doesn't like her, but because something in him registers that she doesn't love her life as much as she's seen to. You have to remember, what pulls people in at the beginning is energy that says, I am happy. I am passionate. I am building something with or without you. That's what makes you irresistible. When a man feels that, he doesn't think, oh, she's too busy for me. He thinks, wow, she values her time. She's interesting. I want to be around that. He starts to ask himself, how do I become part of this? Because your life isn't a blank space waiting to be filled by someone. It's a rich, colorful landscape. And only someone who brings value gets a ticket in. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about pretending you're too busy for love. It's not about being unavailable to the point where no one can get through. That's not strength. That's just self-sabotage dressed up as independence. What I'm talking about is balance. A man should add to your life, not become your life. And when you live like that, you create a relationship where two full people come together, not two halves trying to complete each other. That's the kind of relationship where desire stays alive. That's where respect is built because he sees you as someone who doesn't need him, but wants him. And that distinction, that's everything. Need says, I can't be happy unless you're here. Want says, I'm already happy, and I'd love to share this with you. One is pressure, the other is a gift. And men, the right kind of men, chase the gift. They chase the woman who doesn't stop living just because someone walks into her life. In fact, the woman who keeps living, she's the one they never want to leave. Let's talk about emotional availability, because this is the one that gets really confusing. So many people are walking around thinking, if I show too much, I'll scare him off. Or if I care too soon, he'll think I'm desperate. And then what happens? You start pulling back. You give less. You hide parts of yourself. You hold back your warmth, your affection, your enthusiasm, because you're terrified of being the one who cares more. But let me say something that might surprise you. It's not your emotions that push men away. It's the way you give them recklessly or the way you bury them completely. The woman men chase is not emotionally closed off, and she's not emotionally chaotic either. She's emotionally generous, but with discernment. So what does that look like? It looks like the woman who can say, I had a great time with you tonight without immediately needing a label for what this is. It's the woman who can share something vulnerable, maybe a story about her past or something she's working through, but she's not sharing it from a place of please fix me or please stay so I feel safe. She's sharing because she's real, and that's rare. See, there's this idea floating around that emotional openness equals weakness, that if you care, you lose power, but it's not true. The most powerful person in any relationship is the one who's comfortable with their own heart. Because if you're constantly trying to suppress your feelings to seem chill or detached or unbothered, you're not being strong, you're just being disconnected. And on the flip side, if you throw your whole heart at someone 3 days in and treat the relationship like it's already guaranteed, you're not being loving. You're being reckless. There's a middle ground. And that's where real connection happens. The woman who lives in that space, she's warm, she's kind, she knows how to flirt, how to be playful, how to create a vibe that feels easy, not heavy. She gives without chasing. She expresses without clinging. And that makes a man lean in, because when a woman shows her emotions in a way that feels authentic and grounded, it tells him something important. She's not afraid of intimacy. Now, I'm not talking about intensity. I'm talking about intimacy. Intensity is when you try to bond too fast, too soon. Is when you're pouring your life story out over a drink with someone you barely know. Intimacy is when you share the right thing at the right time with the right person, not to impress, but to connect. And here's the truth. Men remember how you make them feel, not just how you look, not just what you say, but the feeling they get when they're around you. If being around you feels like peace, if it feels like laughter, like honesty, like a breath of fresh air, they will come back for that. They will chase that. But if being around you feels like emotional pressure, like you're trying to extract a commitment just to soothe your anxiety, they'll pull back. Not because they don't like you, but because they feel like they're being asked to carry emotions that haven't had time to build. Naturally, the woman men chase is not the one who tries to rush the emotional timeline. She's the one who allows things to unfold. She creates space for closeness, but she doesn't force it. She's affectionate, but not needy. She's real, but not overwhelming. She's the kind of woman who can say, I really enjoy spending time with you, and then go back to her life without sitting by the phone waiting for a response. That's attractive because, again, and I can't stress this enough, being open doesn't mean giving everything to someone you barely know. It means showing up with honesty while also honoring your own boundaries. You're not auditioning for love. You're not trying to convince someone to feel. You're just showing who you are. Steadily, sincerely, and with enough self-respect to know that if someone doesn't meet you there, that's okay. That kind of energy, that's rare. And when a man feels that openness with strength, he doesn't see it as weakness. He sees it as confidence. He sees it as maturity. He sees it as safe. And men don't run from emotional safety. They run toward it. I'll tell you something that most people don't talk about enough when it comes to attraction, and this might surprise you. But the woman men truly chase isn't the one who flatters their ego. She's not the one who tries to impress them. She's the woman who quietly inspires them to step up. And I don't mean that she nags or pressures him to change. That doesn't inspire anyone. In fact, constant criticism just makes people defensive or with. What I'm talking about is the kind of woman who carries herself in a way that naturally raises the standard for how she's treated. She doesn't demand respect, she commands it just by how she lives. There's something magnetic about being around someone who lives with a sense of purpose. A woman who knows who she is and where she's going doesn't need to shout it from the rooftops. You can feel it in how she moves through the world. She's intentional. She's thoughtful. She knows what matters to her, and she doesn't get pulled off course just because someone cute showed up. And here's what that does to a man who's ready for something real. It makes him want to show up as his best self. Not because she told him to, not because she gave him an ultimatum, but because being in her presence makes him look at his own life differently. She lights a fire in him, not because she's trying to fix him, but because she's focused on herself. When you live in your integrity, when you're aligned with your own values, it naturally creates a mirror for the other person. They start to ask themselves, am I the kind of person who fits in this woman's life? Am I proud of the way I'm showing up right now? That's powerful. I once worked with someone who was always attracting guys who treated her like an option. And we dug into her patterns, and what we realized was this: she was doing everything to make them feel comfortable, supported, desired. But not once did she ask if they were showing up for her. She was so focused on being chosen that she forgot to ask is this someone I actually admire? Someone who inspires me too? And when she shifted into being a woman who stood for something, not just professionally, but emotionally, everything changed. Suddenly the dynamic wasn't about her trying to be enough. It was about him rising up to meet her. That's the difference. When you carry yourself with quiet confidence, not arrogance, just calm certainty, men feel that. They pick up on the fact that you're not looking to be saved, you're not looking to be completed, and you're not afraid to walk away if something doesn't feel right. It's not that you're cold, it's not that you're inflexible, it's that you've done enough work on yourself to know what kind of energy you want in your life, and you're not afraid to lose someone who isn't bringing that. And here's what's wild. When a man meets a woman like that, something clicks. He may not even understand why, but when he finds himself wanting to impress her, not with money, not with status, but with character. He wants to be more reliable. He wants to be more attentive. He starts to think about what kind of man she would want. And he asks himself if he measures up, not because you told him to do any of this, but because the way you live, the way you speak, the way you carry your self-respect invites better behavior from him. Now, here's the key. It has to be real. You can't fake this kind of energy. You can't pretend to be high value while secretly craving validation from someone who's not even treating you well. This has to come from doing the internal work, from knowing that your value isn't based on how someone else responds to you. It's based on how you respond to you. That's where your power is, not in convincing someone to be better, but in being someone who naturally draws out the best in people because you never settled for less in yourself. And listen, not every man will be ready for that. Some will walk away. Some will think it's too much or feel intimidated. That's fine. Let them go. Because the man who is meant for you, he won't be scared of your strength. He'll respect it. He'll be drawn to it. He'll want to meet you there, not because you asked him to, but because the standard you hold for yourself quietly calls him to rise. And that's the kind of connection that lasts, not one built on pressure, but one built on mutual inspiration. Because the right man doesn't want to be dragged. He wants to rise. Let's talk about something that most people overlook when they think about attraction. When we ask the question, what kind of woman do men chase? People often assume the answer has to do with looks, charm, maybe even confidence. And sure, those things matter. But what people don't talk about enough is how powerful playfulness is. That light, cheeky, effortless energy that says, I can have fun. I can enjoy the moment. I'm not taking myself or this too seriously. There's a huge difference between dating someone who feels like a test and dating someone who feels like a break from the world. And this is where playfulness becomes so important. We live in a time where everyone's guarded, everyone's in their heads, everyone's thinking 2 steps ahead, worried about saying too much, doing too little, being too forward, being too passive. It's exhausting. But the woman who knows how to bring ease into the room, who knows how to make a man laugh, who can tease him a little without crossing a line, that woman is unforgettable. She's not trying too hard to be like, she's not trying to manipulate a reaction. She's just present. And presence is one of the most attractive traits you can have. When a man meets a woman who knows how to flow with a moment instead of control it, it's refreshing because she's not playing a role. She's just being herself. And when you're being real, when you're not constantly calculating your next move, you create a kind of connection that's impossible to fake. That playful energy, it builds intimacy without pressure. It creates connection without expectation. It says, let's just be here right now. Let's enjoy this. And that is incredibly powerful. You see so many people approach dating with an intensity that burns out the spark before it even starts. Every conversation becomes an interrogation. Every interaction is measured through the lens of where is this going? And the vibe quickly shifts from romantic to transactional. But the woman who knows how to drop into the moment, who isn't afraid to joke around, who can throw in a little sarcasm, a little charm, a little unpredictability, she brings something that feels alive. And you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be playful. It's not about being over the top or constantly cracking jokes. It's subtle. It's in how you respond with a clever smile, how you lightly challenge him in conversation, how you keep the banter going just long enough to create a spark. It's about energy, effortless magnetic energy. You might ask, but isn't that just being fun? And yes, it is, but don't underestimate that. Because the world is full of people who are serious, who are cautious, who are guarded. But it's rare to find someone who can make you feel good just by being around them. That kind of lightness, that's rare. Now, let's be clear. Being playful doesn't mean being immature, doesn't mean avoiding real conversations or pretending nothing serious matters. Playfulness isn't about escaping depth. It's about creating balance. It's what keeps relationships from getting heavy too quickly. It's what keeps attraction alive. You can still have standards. You can still be emotionally available. You can still know what you want. But if you don't know how to laugh with someone, how to let go, how to enjoy the process, then it doesn't matter how compatible you are on paper. Because the truth is, people don't just fall in love with the idea of someone. They fall in love with the experience of them. A man doesn't chase the woman who's just smart, beautiful, kind. He chases the woman who makes him feel something. The one he can joke with, laugh with, be silly with. The one who brings out the part of him that forgets to be guarded. That's what playfulness does. It unlocks the part of him that wants to connect, not just perform. And you know what happens when that space is created? He lets his guard down. He starts to relax. And when he relaxes, he becomes more himself. That's where real connection begins. Not when two people are trying to impress each other, but when they're comfortable enough to be real, even goofy, even imperfect. If you want to be the woman a man chases, bring the spark. Be the moment in his day that he looks forward to, not because you're performing, but because you're free. Free from the pressure to be perfect, free from the need to overthink, free enough to say, let's enjoy this, let's see where it goes. Because the woman who can hold space for both lightness and depth, she's not just chased, she's cherished. Let's get real for a second. You can be beautiful, kind, confident, emotionally open, playful, all the things we've talked about. But if you don't have standards, none of that will matter. Because here's the truth. The kind of woman a man chases isn't just the one who makes him feel good. It's the one who knows what she will and won't accept. There is something undeniably attractive about a woman who knows where her line is, not just because it challenges a man, but because it grounds him. It gives him something to respect. And more than that, it gives him something to trust. See, a woman who knows her standards is a woman who isn't waiting for someone else to define her worth. She's not trying to win someone over. She's not bending herself into shapes to be more likable. She's already decided what kind of energy belongs in her life. And she's willing to walk away from anything that doesn't meet that standard, even if it's tempting, even if it looks good on the surface. And you know what that does to a man? Makes him step up. Not because she demanded it, not because she threatened to leave, but because her presence alone tells him, you don't get access to me just because you want me. You get access when you show me you know how to value me. And that kind of woman, she's unforgettable. Let's be clear. Standards are not about being rigid. They're not about having a checklist of superficial traits. Standards are about value. They're about behavior. They're about energy. It's saying, I won't invest deeply in someone who only shows up when it's convenient. It's saying, I'm not available for hot and cold energy, for mixed signals, for breadcrumbs. It's not that you're being demanding. It's that you're being discerning. And look, I get it. Sometimes you meet someone and the chemistry is electric. They're charming. They say the right things. I want to give them a chance. But when their actions don't match their words, when the effort starts to fade, when the connection becomes inconsistent, you have to ask yourself, do I want to spend my energy trying to convince someone to treat me well, or do I want to reserve that energy for someone who already does? Because here's the deal. The moment you lower your standards to keep someone, you start teaching them how little they need to give you. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because people don't rise to your expectations if you keep rewarding them for falling short. They only rise when you stop accepting less than what you deserve. The woman a man chases is the one who values herself enough to say no to the wrong things. Not because she's bitter, not because she's got it, but because she knows her peace is worth protecting. She's not afraid of being alone. She's not afraid of walking away. She's not afraid of starting over. And that kind of emotional independence, that's rare. When you have standards, you don't need to play games. You don't need to manipulate or pretend you care less than you do. You simply lead with clarity, and that clarity filters people out. It protects your time, your heart, your future. You don't have to be cold. You can be kind. You can be warm, but being kind doesn't mean being available to people who are inconsistent. Being open doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Being loving doesn't mean accepting crumbs and calling it a meal. You're allowed to want something real. You're allowed to ask for effort. You're allowed to walk away from someone who can't meet you where you are. And here's the part people don't realize. Having standards doesn't repel the right man. It attracts him. Because a man who's ready for something real, he doesn't run from your standards. He respects them. He appreciates that you hold him to something meaningful. It makes him feel like he's earning something of value, not just your attention, but your trust. So if you're sitting there wondering why someone keeps pulling away or why you're stuck in these loops of almost relationships, ask yourself, where have you compromised your standards in the name of potential? Where have you silenced your needs just to keep the peace? Because the woman men chase isn't the one who makes herself small to fit someone else's comfort zone. She's the one who keeps showing up fully, but only for those who are. Showing up fully for her. She doesn't negotiate with red flags. She doesn't rewrite someone's inconsistency into maybe they're just busy. She knows that love without effort isn't love. It's convenience. And she's not here for convenience. She's here for depth, for consistency, for partnership. And when you live by those standards, the right person will chase you, not because you demanded it, but because you're the one who finally made them realize they had to bring their best. Because that's what you bring every time. So what kind of woman do men chase? Not the one who tries to be enough for him, but the one who's already enough for herself. Be her, start today, not for him, for you. Because when you step into that version of yourself, you won't have to chase love. Love